There are many questions swirling around President Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard to the Los Angeles protests. Already, a group of 22 Democratic governors have signed a letter rejecting the mobilization. Joining us now to discuss the tensions, retired FBI agent Bobby Chacon. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
First off, let me get your initial reaction to what's unfolding in LA right now.
Well, I hate to say deja vu, but we've seen protests like this get out of control. Most recently, everybody remembers the summer of 2020. But historically, we've seen, protests that get so emotionally charged that it boils over into actions against law enforcement officers, as we've seen yesterday in Paramount, California. So my first reaction is, I hope this doesn't go much further.
Right. We're seeing video right now of the National Guard earlier kind of pushing the crowd back around the Metropolitan Detention Center there in downtown LA. Using the National Guard for protests, Bobby, is extremely rare. It hasn't happened in decades. Are they trained on protest control and de-escalation, or are they out of their element here?
No, they're actually specifically trained for this often, and they have the tools you see with them, with the shields and with the helmets and things like that, and pepper spray. They were used after the January 6th assault on the Capitol. They are used in this role. They do train for it. They actually bring in play actors in big warehouses to play protesters often. And so yes, they do. This is one of their, even though it hasn't had to. Even though they haven't had to be used in this context in a while, this is one of the things traditionally they've been used for.
LA Mayor Karen Bass said earlier that local authorities are now coordinating with the National Guard. However, it appears that local law enforcement is primarily handling the crowd. What does this tell you?
Well, I mean, it's a good sign, I think, in that that's their job. Their job is to deal with the crowd and let the federal agents enforce the federal law, which is in these situations bringing these potentially deportable people into custody and then letting them face the deportation process. So the crowd control, the traffic control. Yesterday we saw LA Fire Department have to respond to a car fire in Paramount. So the locals are doing those things: crowd control, traffic, accidents, injuries, things like that. And then the federal agents are enforcing the federal law, which is taking people into custody, detaining them for potential deportation.
And that coordination in the event of protests like we're seeing unfold right now, how does that coordination happen? Is it generally local authorities that are handling the crowd?
Yes, I mean, and that's the way it should be, with the exception today of now we have the addition of the National Guard. Yesterday, it was simply the LA County Sheriff, assisting in the crowd control and the ICE agents taking the people into custody. Whereas today, because obviously now it's moved to LA, bigger crowds, larger streets, and things like that. So the National Guard is there to assist, and LAPD will be handling all the local crimes, the local traffic. LA Fire will be handling any, unfortunately, any car fires that might happen, accidents, things like that, injuries. And so that's the coordination that's taking place now. Everybody has to do their role, and this thing can be handled safely.
Bobby, you're also an attorney. Earlier, the LAPD declared the protest an unlawful assembly. What does that mean, and what legal authority does that give police?
So there's a couple of things they have to do. First, they have to make that decision. It's almost like it's akin to an emergency declaration, where now you've said this crowd has gotten too big and it's gotten too unruly, and now it presents a threat to public safety, to the citizens of LA City, and we're going to announce this as an unlawful assembly. Now they have to make an announcement. They go on loudspeakers or whatever they can do. They make that announcement that you are unlawfully assembling. You have X number of minutes to disperse, or you will be taken into custody and charged with an unlawful assembly. And so that's a local tool. I mean, look, the feds also have 18 USC, I think it's 2101, is a federal statute that prohibits rioting like this. So there are some certain tools. I think that the federal authorities have their hands full with the deportation process. And I think that the locals, LAPD, with the assistance from the National Guard, could be using this unlawful assembly statute on the state level and the city level to basically bring this under control and bring these people into some kind of custody, maybe for a couple of hours. Maybe it acts as a cooling off period, and things can kind of calm down.
Right. We hope that's the case. All right. Retired FBI agent Bobby Chacon, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me.